Jesus Christ. What the fact? Okay, we're gonna talk about all this, right? We're gonna talk all about it. Hi friends! Welcome back to Cygoth. My name is Courtney, and we're gonna talk about the thing. You've probably all heard the utter bollocks that came out the mouth of Donald Trump and RFK Jr. Is that his name? I don't know. I don't care. I'm sure you can tell I'm not American, so US politics is kind of lost on me, but I think from memory RFK Jr. is some kind of health minister. Whatever his ties to this claim may be, it's... How does this even happen? You may have only caught the first half of this title, and don't worry, we are going to talk about it, but the main aim of this video is to learn how to spot misinformation and how to critically analyze the information that you're given. Now, I do want to make a proper video on this supposed association, but for the purpose of today, we're just going to have a mosey through and sort of analyze what we're seeing. Before we start, I want to make something completely transparent. I don't blame the average person for falling for misinformation. Typically, the way people find misinformation in terms of medical topics, usually it's like their doctor has told them something and they want to read more into it. And that's a totally natural thing to do. You know, what's the first thing you do? You Google it. And usually you might read the first 1 or 2 pages that you come across. But do you know that it could be potentially life-threatening information? Misinformation. You know, Stephanie down the street who works at Burger King, they're not going to know what Google Scholar is. And that is precisely why I'm making this video. I had planned to do it at some point, but I think right now is the perfect time to do it. I'm not doing this to shame you at all. I'm doing this to help you, to give you the information, quality information that you need to decide on healthcare matters. You know, I'm a university student. I spent 9 years doing my first degree in medical science, and I'm currently studying laboratory medicine. I have the education, the access, and the skills to the most top-tier information, quality information I should say, top quality information, that the general public doesn't. And I know I'm very privileged in that regard. You know who I do blame though? You know who I'm really fucking pissed off at? The misinformation peddlers that spew this woof fuckery to fearmonger and to sell products. And for what? This isn't patient care. This is fucking bullshit. And now this bullshit, this fucking bullshit has made its way into fucking American politics, into the highest office of politics. What the fuck is going on? What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Tylenol and autism. Hi, editing Courtney here. I've already done all the research that I needed to do to write this script, so I'm just gonna show you what I did, and I approached this as if I was just the common person, just following links. First, we're going to look for some credible information. If we simply type into Google, does Tylenol cause autism? You're going to get biased results. I'm using my least used browser because my default one has set its algorithm to look for these terms in sources I would usually use. We want a clean slate. As you can see, my first few results are all news articles. You could read them, but they aren't considered credible because of any potential bias. 2 papers could say the exact phrase, Donald Trump announces link between Tylenol and autism. Same fact, but they could frame it in different ways using subtle emotive language. A right-wing paper could potentially be pushing the narrative further, and they'll also try and minimize the harm that it will do to people. Not might, will. A left-leaning paper like The Guardian in the UK might subtly introduce those misogynistic undertones that are being presented here, basically blaming pregnant people for causing autism. You're never going to see a right-wing person, you mention any other factors like advanced paternal age. That's a link to autism, but we don't talk about that. It's basically implying that pregnant people are deliberately harming their babies just to relieve some pain. The fact is that Tylenol is the only safe drug to use when you're pregnant to relieve any sorts of pain. But if you know anything about pregnancy, or have been pregnant, you know that Tylenol just doesn't kick all the different types of pain. You've got back pain, you've got joint pain, from putting all that weight on. You got boob pain, you got swelling in your ankles if you're preeclamptic, which I hope you're not. Tylenol doesn't target those sorts of pains. In my search of US newspapers, I had to Google them to see what political leaning they had. The Washington Times was an example of a right-leaning paper, while USA Today is left-leaning. Oh my god, that just proves my point. Fight like hell. I got this information by Googling top 20 US newspapers, then taking the title of one and adding political stance. Each time I did this, it linked me to a website called allsides.com. Reading the About section and the Misinformation section, I felt confident in trusting the judgment of this site, especially because it's not a government entity. It is a good idea to compare and contrast the information used from papers all throughout the political spectrum. You just have to make sure you pick up on that emotive language. Now, this was a little bit more difficult for me because I don't consume US news media. I tend to stick on my side of the pond. We got enough problems here. I had to rely on a website to get this information that maybe most Americans already know. I tried to use other search terms, more biased search terms, to try and find the totally malignant woo-fuckery that people post. But I'm guessing it's still early days, so all we really have are newspapers. Okay, first one I found. Hang on, Trump and Musk reunited. They're back together. America's power couple. So, first one I found, right? Healthline. This is the American Healthline. Scrolling through, you can see all these hyperlinks to news articles to back up what they're saying. They even linked an open access, which is freely available to anyone, journal article, which is generally considered top-tier information. We're coming back to that. We're coming back to that. If you scroll to the bottom, when we get there, if you scroll to the bottom of the second article, you have all the information of the people that worked on the articles, what they did, and what date they did it. It looks like it was updated yesterday? Hang on, what's the date today? 24th. It was updated yesterday. Let's have a look at that journal article I mentioned. Like I said, this is an open access article, which means anyone can read it. The downside is there's a lot of technical jargon that requires prior knowledge to understand. The information here, is called an abstract. It's a summary of all the sections of the paper. Sometimes they're laid out like this, other times it's all in one paragraph. This makes it easier for someone like me to go, yes, this is the information I need to spend 45 minutes reading. Or, nah, that's not what I'm after. I've saved myself 45 minutes reading something. In this case, where is it? In this case, because it's saying there is an association, I'm going to have a read through and give you a more detailed understanding of how they came to that conclusion.
Many hours later.
Aha! That's what it is. This paper only examined 8 other papers, and only 5 of them found a positive correlation. That is to say, they found an association between Tylenol and autism. So not even all of them. And they were kind enough to organize them in this neat little table. So what did I do? That's right. You bet your ass that I looked at every single one of those papers. The interesting thing to note is that all of these papers, even the ones that didn't find a correlation, were all written between 2016 and 2024. Very recent, and usually we like recent. But what about historical studies? What about studies from when autism wasn't commonly diagnosed, like it is today, with better diagnostic tools, better screening, a better understanding of what autism is? The authors of this paper said this. You can pause it and read it. And even though this paper looked at a lot of different confounding factors, which are factors that could skew results, they looked at a lot, but they didn't consider genetics. You know, if mum or dad has autism, it's quite likely that the child will as well. And what about socioeconomic status? Most Americans are too broke for American healthcare. I'm sorry, but it's true, and it's really sad. Some families might not be able to afford to get their child diagnosed, whether or not they've had Tylenol. So it could be that people that didn't take Tylenol had a child that was autistic, and the other way around. It could be that, mama popping pills every day, but the child didn't become autistic. You can't look at these things on an individual level. You have to go by populations. I'm just going to leave this here. One of the authors was an expert witness for a trial, and the bollocks they come up with afterwards is nearly political. It's written so eloquently, it feels political. This involvement may be very contradictory. Yeah, no fucking shit. No shit, it's going to be perceived as a conflict of interest, and no one will be able to convince me otherwise. So yeah, I had a hunch, and I went with it. If I didn't think it was spicy enough, I just had to Google it. I just had to Google it. Andrea Baccarelli was an expert witness in a lawsuit against Tylenol maker. Judge ruled his autism data review was skewed and threw it out. Oh, well, and what's this? 150K to testify? Yes. So I hope I've made my point evident that even if it comes from a journal article, you have to question it. Always question everything. Follow things up. Google to your heart's content, but make sure you back things up. If you've watched any of my videos, I use about 40, 50, 60 references. I can say with certainty that I know what I'm talking about. These people with PhDs are meant to be smarter than little old me with a bachelor's. Trying for masters though. They're meant to be smarter than me, and yet they didn't even consider these extremely important factors. Every time you look at a piece of media, there are questions you have to ask yourself. What language or tone is the article using? Is it flowery and fluffy, or is it cold hard facts? What qualifications or experience does the author have? Are they a psychiatrist that specializes in developmental disorders? Or are they a fucking politician? Finally, what sources are they using to write up this information? Are they using journal articles? Are they using medication databases? Or are they just pulling it out of their asses? Okie dokie. I'm gonna wrap it up here because I really want to sink my teeth into the rest of the literature around this particular topic. I have to know. It doesn't matter if it agrees or disagrees with the notion. I have to know. So I'll get this edited and sent out ASAP. Until next time, bye friends!